Hello there. This is Paul Glumaz, and today is the 14th of May, and we are probably in the eighth or ninth week of the COVID-19 lockdown, with some beginning opening up. I hope you are all surviving. That's the most important thing. So, this is a very special presentation today, which I'm doing. And this is on behalf of General Welfare Presents. Uh, what is happening on a global scale is unprecedented in world history, or at least since the last 600 years. We're seeing a total breakdown of the system, a total breakdown. This is the big one. This is the one that Lyndon LaRouche has been discussing for many, many uh, decades. Since about 71, he's been talking about the directionality of the system that we've been in, the way people think, have been accustomed to thinking, the changes of our nation and our world from a productively oriented society to a non-productively oriented society, where cheap labor replaces um, uh, skilled labor, uh, and financial depredations have ruled the world increasingly since the 70s. And now we come to the collapse. The virus only unmasked the true nature of the rot of our system. And because of that, we are now facing a total disintegration of society and of the world, with famines coming in the months ahead in the poorer areas of the world, and to some degree, possibly even in our own country. So you're looking at the specter of mass death on a global scale as the system collapses. The COVID-19 virus is not clear where that's all going to go. It could be go, come and go, come and go. That's uh, that's not going to uh, get us where we have to go. Now, where do we have to go? This crisis will continue to unfold and get worse and worse and worse until the exit point is reached. And the exit point that has to occur is when the major nations use their national sovereign power to sit down with each other and say, we're going to make a different system. We're going to change the entire way this works. And this is what Lyndon LaRouche has been presenting for uh, 50 years. And that system is the system of productive development. It's a system of physical economics. It's a system of a culture that promotes the development of the human being. It's a way of thinking that human beings have value in the future. That human beings have value. They're not trash. They're not animals. They're not something you use and discard, but they represent a continuation between the present and eternity. We're the only species that can uh, avoid extinction by changing, by developing. And that's the whole issue right now. We are facing that kind of crisis, that kind of profound species crisis. And that exit point is when they sit down and say, the US, China, definitely Russia and India, probably Japan, a few other major nations will sit down and say, hey, what are the rules that we're going to adopt between each other so that we can go back to or go into the future in a productive manner? And in this context, the LaRouche movement is going to be putting out um, a pamphlet on how to put 1.5 billion people back to work. How do we do that? How do we get 1.5 billion people on the planet, not just back to work? And that's kind of wrong way to put it. Actually create productive jobs for 1.5 billion people. That is how you create the wealth. That's how you create the way to sustain. And we will totally change the supply chains. It won't be just in time, and it won't be on one global supply chains, but it will be much more oriented to the people in the country. There's no reason why any African nation should be importing food. They can grow the food, but they don't have the infrastructure to connect up the rural areas with the population, with the urban areas, and so forth and so on. So they import food. It's more complex than that. But the IMF and the World Trade Organization prohibits the poorer countries from producing their own food because it's more expensive to produce. There's less technologies, there's less infrastructure. But a sovereign nation will change all of that. So every nation should be producing food for itself. Every nation should be employing its people in building roads and building rail and building infrastructure. The U.S. can come in and help. China can come in and help. All these other countries can help, but they have to employ their own people to do this, and that's not allowed. These countries are in debt. These countries have to pay debt. That's the number one thing. They have to pay debt to the financial system before they can do anything. And when they're done paying interest, they can't do anything. They have no credit. And if they create their own credit to do anything, it's not has any value outside of their country. So they can't use it for anything but their own country, and then it's completely devalued. The black market, forget it. So this is a situation globally, and now the whole thing is collapsing. It was collapsing financially. The whole system was collapsing financially back in September, and the Federal Reserve has now, since September, added $4 trillion to its balance sheets, and now it's $7 trillion, and it's going up fast. So the question you need to ask is, how many more continuing trillions of dollars are required to bail out the banking system? Trillions of dollars being issued by the Federal Reserve, by the Bank of England, by the European Central Bank, by the Bank of Japan. How many more trillions? And how many more trillions you have to pay to people who aren't being productive? But you don't want them to riot, so you want to have to pay them something, maybe a little bit. And then what about how many more trillions you have to pump in to get people back to work? And what are you getting them back to work as? Okay, so you need to create physical production on a mass scale. You're not going to be able to do that within the existing system, which no longer exists. And I'll explain why it no longer exists. Look at Argentina. What is Argentina doing? Argentina is saying, look, we're not going to pay the debt unless it's under our conditionalities. We'll pay it, and we'll decide how we're going to pay it, and you have to accept that. Well, that's where every country that owes all this debt is at. They're going to pay the debt in this situation? No, they're going to tell the banks to stick it. It's a debt moratorium, in effect. All the countries are going to have to say that. Can they pay anything? No, they can't pay anything. You think in the middle of all this they're going to be able to pay anything? No. Well, if you can't pay your rent and you have a moratorium on your on evictions, and if you can't pay your mortgage and you have a moratorium on temporary moratorium on foreclosures, well, these countries have the same right. They don't have a right. They don't have to pay. So it's that kind of situation that we're going into. So you're going to need a new system. And that system can only come about properly if you crush the British Empire. What is the British Empire? Well, the British Empire is the whole world, essentially. It's everything. It's the financial system. It's Europe. It's the European Union. It's the United States. It's the WTO. It's the United Nations. It's everything. And outside of that part of the world which has some sovereignty, and it's running massive operations at this point to prevent Donald Trump from being elected, because the only person in the United States who has the potential to lead the United States into such a new system is Donald Trump. He philosophically has no problem with massive infrastructure development, science, going to the fusion, and going into space. He is not a greenie. He wants to work with other countries. He wants mutual development. He said that many, many times. He's the only one with any kind of orientation in the leadership of the United States who could actually, under certain circumstances, sit down and work it out on behalf of the American people. And so this is a war. This is an incredible war that's going on right now. It's an amazing war. And what we now know is that in the campaign of Biden and all of the various groups that are being propping up all over the country that are going to be part of the operation to defeat Donald Trump at the election, they're employing like this General McChrystal character who's heading one of these things. They're employing military grade psychological warfare to affect people's perceptions and pump this into every avenue, every pore of information in the society, whether it's your cell phone or it's Facebook or it's the internet or the mass media or whatever. They're going to use information warfare. It's no longer about issues. There are no issues. There's just one issue, and that's removing Trump. They're going to use that psychological perception to try to control people's perceptions and create a perception that's not real, to create a perception that is not the real reality. And on that basis, they plan to bring in a dictatorship under Joe Biden and whoever is his vice president, which probably looking like what's her name, Kamala Harris. But anyhow, so that's what they're doing. And on the other hand, the Trump organization has to crush this machine. And what is this machine? It's the Obama machine. It's the machine that remained in place after Hillary lost the election. And that machine is running this whole resistance. It's running the coup. It's running all of the operations. And no Democrat has had the courage to stand up to that machine. Even though a lot of Democrats do not agree with what Obama's been doing, they nonetheless don't have the courage. They don't have the right. And when they do, they get slammed. They get crushed. And the only Democratic person or semi-democratic person the only person who stood up to the Obama apparatus was the LaRouche movement. They're the only person that stood up to the takeover of the Democratic Party by the Obama operation, which has played a very major role in why we have even a ghost of a chance of changing the direction of the United States and the world. So this is a war. If Trump wants to take the White House for a second term, he's got to crush the Obama apparatus. And this is where the whole situation with Michael Flynn, the masking, the unmasking, the investigations, the potential indictments of Brennan, Clapper, Comey, Biden, and possibly even Obama is taking place. And this also explains why Judge Emmett Sullivan is refusing to allow for the DOJ to end the prosecution of Michael Flynn. So it's going to be an all-out battle, and it's going to occur on every area and everything. And the COVID-19 virus is going to be used to convince people that Donald Trump is incompetent, or Donald Trump opened up too soon, or Donald Trump did a lockdown, and they're going to bring it in from every direction. And that the problem with the economy is Donald Trump, not the financial collapse. Or the problem of the economy is China, or China's responsible for the virus. So that's a whole nother one that's being brought in. So you get all these different varieties of conspiracy theories, which all vector into preventing the exit point. The exit point is when the United States and China and Russia and India and maybe some other countries sit down and work out a new system. And until that happens, things are going to continue to disintegrate. Things are going to continue to get worse. And there's nothing that can be done until you put it back together again under a new system. And so that's why it's very important that people not get caught up in the fray, but that they keep their focus on the outcome. No matter how many people are going to be starving to death, and it could be millions, it could be tens of millions, it could be hundreds of millions of people could be starving to death between now and next year. It could happen. It's happening, starting to happen, because the food production and distribution structures are breaking down all over the world. And and you also have this massive locust plague in Africa, which no one did anything about. So now you have a situation where, all these things, all these calamities have to have have to be vectored politically into that kind of new system, because it's the system which is the problem. It's the whole global financial system, the way things work, the way people think, the way that people live, that that rejects the idea of a world where a physical economic um, reality. It rejects physical economic reality, that you need to create wealth to sustain human beings. You need to create production to sustain human beings. It doesn't come. It doesn't come through the marketplace. You need to have nations to promote the development. Development doesn't occur unless you have a nation that can promote it. It doesn't occur. That's what a nation is. A nation is precisely the vehicle for development. If you don't have a nation, you don't have a functioning nation, you can't develop. In Africa, you don't have really nations. You really don't have Africa. There is no Africa from an economic sense, because 90% of all the trade is not within Africa. It's between African nations and other nations outside of Africa. Can you imagine that? Only 10% of the internal of trade between nations in Africa is with other African nations. So you need that. The only way that can change is if you have nations, and you really don't have nations in a sense. They are under a neo-colonial control. And guess what? We are also have been, especially under Bush and Obama, we've been under a neo-colonial financial system. We've been a colony, a control colony of a monetary system. And that's what we're going to have to change. And that's what Trump wants to do, but he can't do it just by being president. There has to be a process of collapse in which Donald Trump emerges to pick up the pieces in the context of a conference of conferences that set up a new system. There's no other way it's going to work. So that's where we are on that. Now, this apparatus is a surveillance apparatus. It runs on the basis of surveillance, and this is how they're going to run the opposition to Trump. They have the surveillance apparatus to monitor everything that everyone is doing, and then they can profile their operations. If you're a right winger, we're going to profile you this way, and if you're a left winger, they're going to profile you that way, and they're going to throw in all kinds of different things to throw you off, to get you caught up in all various different issues, right? And so that's how this thing is going to work. That's how they're planning to run this thing against Trump. So meanwhile, the population is increasing. Their section of the population that has been working is being screwed, and they want to get those people to blame Trump. But on the other hand, those people also know that it's not Trump, that it's the system, and that it's the media, and that it's this and it's that, and unfortunately they think it's the Chinese. They think the Chinese. They're being told the Chinese are in collusion with Biden and Obama to bring down Trump, which is not the case. Actually, the Chinese prefer Donald Trump. The Chinese absolutely prefer Donald Trump to any of the others, because they know that they can work with Donald Trump in that context, because he represents the real America. And so, but nonetheless, these are the massive information warfare operations that are being run. And as we go into this situation, we see this. We see a little bit of a taste of it in the campaign of the 25th district, which was vacated by Kathy Lee over scandals. 25th district in California. And what happened there was the Democrats started this whole anti-Trump operation of linking her opponent, the opponent of to being just a vote against Trump. This is a vote against Trump, and this is, and he's responsible for this and he's responsible for that. Well, the Democrat lost bigger than before, but this is just a taste of what's going to happen in November. It's going to be massive. It's going to be, and the population is going to be driven into hysteria. On one end, you're going to have the psychotic anti-Trump thing is going to be escalated to a maximum, and the protests and the reactions to the lockdown or to other things is going to go the other way, and you're seeing a much greater cultural divide being exploited, so that one part of the society is literally going to be at war with another part of the society, and this is not good. This is not a good situation, but that is the reality. So it's all in. It's all in on every level, and the British are running this thing from the top. They run the Obama apparatus from the top, and these billionaires, like Bloomberg and Eric Schmidt and Gates, they're all part of this utopian world of depopulation and what have you. And I'm not clear on all the things about Gates and the COVID-19 and the Imperial College of London and their evaluations and how they forced the lockdown and all of that. I don't really understand all of that. I don't know exactly how that all works. And even if that is the case, and it could very well be the case, it doesn't solve our problem, which is the end point, which is the exit point from the crisis, which is the beginning point of turning everything around. And it's got to be turned around on a total global scale. You're not going to solve this thing in one country. It's going to be solved, and we have the potential because we have Xi Jinping in China, you have Putin in Russia, you have Modi in India. I mean, I'm saying that you have leaders who could actually pull it off. And you have a Donald Trump who could, under certain circumstances, pull it off as well. So that's really the situation that we're in, and everything has to be done to see to it that the final point, the end point of the crisis, is the beginning point of a new architecture, of a different world. And there could be tremendous casualties between now and then. And it would be better if there weren't, but there could be. But that's where we have to end up. And people have to put in their mind and that's the end point, that's the exit point from the crisis. That's how we end the crisis. And if they operate from that standpoint, then we have some hope, because people will say, okay, this is what's happening now, but this is where we have to go. This is where we have to go. And 3 weeks ago, there was a conference, April 26th, 25th, 26th, of the Schiller Institute, which began to lay this out in public through an internet conference that involved the entire world, where major powers were represented. And now we had a similar shorter 4-hour last Saturday, where the same thing began. So we're starting to put together the dialogue using the internet, using the Zoom capability, using the internet to actually lay out, have that dialogue, to present that policy. So then at the next one in the middle of June, the 1.5 billion person productive jobs one is going to be featured. And this is how we create the environment for bringing these powers together as we go deeper and deeper into the collapse, as we go deeper into the breakdown of civilization that we're now facing. So that's pretty much where we are. And your participation in this is vital. I encourage you to go to the LaRouche PAC website, to the Schiller website. I encourage you to keep in mind always, it's not what's happening right now. It's how what is happening can be used to create the changes in the way people think that vector into a final conference, the conferences that we need, the exit point from the crisis. And only if such conferences actually occur will there be any hope for humanity at this point. We are in the breakdown. This is the big one, and that's the situation. So I wish everyone the best possible in this crisis, but becoming active is the best way to deal with the mess that you're dealing with. To become active with us, become active with your friends, and get this out to everybody. That the LaRouche movement and the Schiller Institute and have put together the policies over the last 50 years that are going to be the policies that will be adopted if those conferences come off, and if a new architecture is set up, a new Bretton Woods, a new fixed exchange system, and so forth. And if you don't do that, it'll break down. Countries will have to go their own way. Countries will have to not trade with each other. It'll be a mess. And it'll probably lead to a war. There's no way you can be able to stop a war without those kind of agreements. And then this country will have their own, there'll be an attempt to establish a central bank cryptocurrency to control the world. And then you'll have other countries break from that. And then you'll have China with their own crypto, own digital gold-based currency, and so on and so forth. It'll be a total mess. But that's the way it is. If you don't have an agreement among nations, that's the way it's going to be. It's going to be a total mess, dog eat dog, and that's why you need to have that conference. You need to have those conferences. So I want you to not be oppressed by this whole process. That there is hope, and that hope lies in the future potential that this disaster will create an end to the whole criminal system that we've been in, the whole neo-colonial, colonial, looting, anti-development, anti-human world that we have been increasingly a part of, that this will come to an end as a result of the crisis. And so we have to put forward a new paradigm. And so stay tuned. It's very important. And come back next week. All right. Take care, and wish you the best.